Welcome one and all to our GOP debate coverage for the final election ? I'm John Iadarola. Yes, I do still work here. And joining me on our election coverage, Erlich and Jayar Jackson. How's it going, guys?
What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? The hardest working man. You still work here, John. Yes. And we shall put you to work.
That's not how it works. John, he's worked so little in the last 3 months. He's in a huge debt. A huge debt. What has he been doing? Guys, the baby peed. Is it covered in its own goo? Let me get off the goo and then go back to sleep.
The answer is yes. Anyway, we are actually doing special debate response here. It is bi-coastal. I'm broadcasting from New York. You guys are both in LA. We were watching simultaneously, live commenting. We would love to be able to do live reactions, but of course, copyright being what it is, we're here now. We have thoughts, we have SOTs. We're going to be responding to all of the different, dust ups, all of the different smears, as well as the coverage there, the event that Donald Trump held to try to draw attention away from the debate. We will be getting to that. But guys, I think we should probably start off with our overall reaction before we really dive into the nitty gritty. So why don't we do that? The GOP has now finished their third debate. It was, for this campaign, the best of the GOP best, fighting to place second through sixth in the primary, fighting, I guess, for a cabinet position. But you had Ron DeSantis there, you had Ramaswamy, you had Nikki Haley, and a few others, not as many as in prior debates. They're already starting to drop off. We'll see who makes the cut for the next one. But it seemed to me, and obviously Erlich, Jayar Jackson, I wanna know what you guys think, that this was pretty much what I would have expected, despite the fact that I've been out of the news cycle for 3 months. It's still basically a competition for them to try to compete with each other, to promise that they're going to rack up the biggest body count, regardless of topic. If it's about foreign policy, if it's about drugs in America, if it's about immigration, it's promises to shoot people dead. That's effectively what it's all about. We saw a lot of that, a lot of tough talk, a lot of vague talk, a lot of evasions of questions, some hostility towards the moderators specifically. And at some point, we're definitely gonna have to talk about the moderators. It's easy to forget that they were there, but technically they were. So I overall thought that Ramaswamy was able to dominate. It felt to me like the most minutes of the conversation. Ron DeSantis tried to look tough, but it's not in his wheelhouse. I don't think that he sold it particularly well, though he did get a little bit of applause. And the rest, including Tim Scott, were able to break through on a couple of issues, but I didn't see anything massive there that's likely to upset the balance of the primary, particularly because there wasn't a lot of it that really had much to do with Trump, let alone directly challenging Trump. There were a couple of comments about the wall, a little bit about debt. It's good that they're acknowledging Trump's failures in those areas, but they weren't really doing much more than in past debates to talk about the guy that is still dominating the polls. So why don't we go to you, Jayar? What did you think about this debate? I know you guys have been following this a little bit more closely than I over the last 3 months.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think as you're talking about, they're all vying for positions 2 through 6, whoever's left. And the thing is, what they've noticed is, Donald Trump is leading. He's the vicious one. He's the one who talks about the things that he'll do to other people. He started his whole damn campaign back in 2015 talking about what he's going to do to someone, certain groups of people specifically. So they're like, we've tried the attacking a bit. Chris Christie's been the most consistent. We tried the attacking a bit of Donald Trump. Hasn't really made the dent that we thought. So let's go for the viciousness on times 10 now. So that's why we didn't get many discussions about reality-based things that most Americans probably care about. So when they touched on some of those things, which is, 3/4 into the debate, about a few of them talked about the issues that people have with economically in their own households and things that they're struggling with, food on the table, the normal things, right? But as they addressed those things, or they brought those topics up, there was no answers. There was no solutions. There was vague things about how they'd envision it in this utopian society that they've created, even though they said everyone in it is devastated. We're killing folks. People are coming for us. So there's a utopia, and there's also this horrific scene that we've got all at the same time. It's just a lot of emotional words that gets people to then feel a certain way, be afraid, mad, anything, to the point where maybe they'll start leaning in their direction, because I guess that's what Donald Trump is good at. Problem, Donald Trump does it naturally. He is one of those people who basks in hatred and anger and violence and opposition and constant fighting. These other folks have to plan out their things. Tim Scott, we'll talk specifically since you're talking about folks. Tim Scott, I say it every time, I'm fascinated by how boring, but then interesting Tim Scott is. Every time he speaks, he's reciting the stuff that they practice. You can tell he's basically looking up at the top of his head, trying to find the words that he was trying to remember. So their whole time they're trying to come up with this particular characterization to put upon themselves and put out there to maybe win something. And now it's just straight up vitriol. That's what I saw as a lot of it. As we go through the details, we'll see how they tried to navigate their way through some of that stuff. But there was viciousness, and there was a lot of condoning. Let's just call it what it was: murder.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, we can get into the specifics of foreign policy, but for me, it was very clear that like the nonsense that you have to speak as a Republican, the weird non-logic of having a platform that is both for this like America first non-interventionism and let's dominate the world by building all the tanks, by putting millions of submarines in the South China Sea. The only person who can execute that speech and walk that line is Donald Trump, and he wasn't there. So the whole debate just felt awkward because that is the Republican Party's platform. It's just awkward. Trump is able to make it entertaining enough and ridiculous enough and nail the one-liners enough and big dong everybody on the stage enough for everyone to kind of lose focus on the fact that all of their platform is insanely counterproductive to whatever it for the first issue pertains, purports to support, and then completely turns its back on in a few minutes. And we'll have a bunch of examples of that. I think the winner in my book is Nikki Haley, head and shoulders above everybody else on that stage. I think Ron DeSantis had like some horrible, weird, grimacy things. Nikki Haley was able to put her 5-inch heels on the throat of Vivek Ramaswamy, who is over. Vivek Ramaswamy, who essentially said he'd rather work on Ronna McDaniel's job than he would for the American people as president of the United States. He doesn't want the job. He never did. It was never a serious consideration for it. This is just marketing for himself to now do the job, or at least put the pressure on the people that he feels is safe to put the pressure on, which is the Republican Party leadership, and to try to make a name for himself there. And then the rest of it was very accurately very effectively a lot of foreign policy. Like Nikki Haley's like, I did all the deals with all these countries already. I know how big our Navy is, and no one else really had a command of that. I don't like Nikki Haley at all. I think she sucks, but she did, in my opinion, win the debate tonight, hands down.
Really quick, John and Brett. I said I agreed with you on that with Nikki Haley, and that's because as far as looking like a candidate who has a grasp on enough of the issues, because that's something I've always said as well. Why is it we expect a president or a presidential candidate at this point to literally know how to do everything, or also literally can do those things? There's a reason why there's positions within our government and why some parts do one thing and then the president does another. But still, as it goes, she seemed the most have the most grasp on how everything works to the degree that presidents control, and also beyond that as well too. So that part I think is what she won on. The problem Nikki Haley's got is that she's running as a Republican right now in 2023, who want nothing to do, voters in general want nothing to do with normalcy, showing that you're illustrating you have a grasp on the topics, talking about your experience in it and why it actually would be beneficial for her to then be doing that stuff again. She said all that stuff. I know the applause lines were getting limited by Lester Holt at the beginning, but they wouldn't have been applauding any of those things from that point. Number one, because they probably wouldn't have understood what she was saying. And number two, they're like, well, that sounds like it's responsible. But no, they want nothing to do with any of that stuff. They want anger and violence. She didn't give it in those moments. Therefore, she didn't get those props.
Yeah, her assertions that she's going to go around the country and around the world killing people were a little bit more vague than some of the other candidates. We're gonna return to the topic of where the moderators popped up, where they didn't seem to care what was happening, and where they did across multiple different areas. But you guys are talking about Nikki Haley and about the talks about the Navy and stuff. So I want to focus on that because Hugh Hewitt's in this debate. I don't know why he's so frequently a moderator in debates. I don't think that like a progressive or liberal equivalent to a Hugh Hewitt who happens to host a radio show would ever be brought on. But he had a moment way back in 2016 where he asked for specifics, like he did in this debate, about the nuclear triad. And he made Donald Trump look like a complete fool because he had no idea what he was talking about. And it felt to me like he was looking to do the same thing by like demonstrating his own expertise by being hyper specific. I want you to tell me how many ships we'll have in 2 years and which type of ships. And I thought, look, I would love for our president to have a firm grasp of the issues, but who cares? Who expects all of them to be able to say we're going to have 332 or 338 ships, and this is how many like littoral ships we're going to have, and this is how many minesweepers? Like it seemed to me like it was so disconnected from what people would want to know, even if we're going to get in depth about national security or something like that. It just seemed like such a waste of time to put so much of the moderators' interest and passion into something that I'm sure flew over the head and outside of the interest of so many people viewing this.
Well, as a person who has to interview people to like get a job, there are types of questions that you do, right? You ask just to see if they have like a specific knowledge of something. And Nikki Haley did. She's like, we have 328 ships. Like she knew whatever the number was. And there are other people. So there's people in the job interview who do know that stuff. And this is a job interview. Those moderators are interviewing them. And I think people observing the job interview, like the HR person who does the initial screening, they just want to see that you have some kind of grasp. And I think that's the position that a lot of viewers are in. They're like, I don't know how many ships we are in, but she seems to. And she seems like someone I have confidence in to know the inner workings of our military. Now, the other type of person in that interview is something that Donald Trump would do. And I think the viewer would probably respond to what I think we all in our gut would know be a Donald Trump answer, which is more ships, faster ships, stronger ships, bigger ships than their ships. And our bigger ships are going to be faster and stronger ships than their biggest, strongest, fastest ships. Like that's how it goes. And I think that's what the viewers are looking for or would be looking for if they hadn't already made up their mind like they have in this Republican primary.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, like on a gut level, I don't know exactly how Republicans will process what they heard, the claims, whether a little bit vague. Ramaswamy was like, we're going to have 20% more or something. But I believe that Ron DeSantis said we're going to have 600. And I'm not an expert when it comes to this. I don't know exactly how many ships and what types of ships we should have. But it feels to me that if we have about 300, 600 seems like too many. That seems like way, way, way too many considering we already bear in a military. Not an expert, that's just what I feel. Anyway, any other general comments, general reactions before we jump into some of the specifics?
The overall arc of it was they start off by saying, all right, hi, what'd you have for breakfast? Then they were like, tell me what you know about foreign policy because that's the news right now. Then they transition into like pop news, which is like, what do you think about TikTok? And everybody's like, shut it down. It's China TikTok. And even like Vivek Ramaswamy, who is the Mr. like, don't censor everyone, was like, except when it comes to TikTok, let's start censoring people. And then at the end, when grandma went to sleep and grandpa had passed out in his armchair, then they said they were going to take away their Medicare and Social Security. Then they were saying, oh, you know how we're going to do Part A, Medicare Advantage plans? We're going to do more of those. And as we all know, some of us know, Medicare Advantage is basically not Medicare. It's private insurance instead of the public insurance that is Medicare. It's an expansion of it to offset some of the federal costs. But as we know, in my experience with private health insurance in this country, it makes it more expensive than everybody else. So it was hilarious. They waited till Nana went to sleep before saying that she was going to die poor.
You mentioned the pre-debate meals. I actually missed that. I was still doing my setup. I know that this would be putting us out of order. Could we just check in with that before we dive into, and we're going to the incredibly substantive responses or the questions at the very least. What were they saying about their food? Let's take a look at that.
Pre-debate meal.
Enchiladas.
Post-debate meal.
Enchiladas.
Usually has French fries in it.
Well, if I had my choice, I'd have a McDonald's Big Macs and French fries, but I typically have salmon and some asparagus.
Pre-debate, you don't want to do anything to upset the apple cart.
And after the debate, are you ravenous? Are you like digging into a burger, or what are you doing after the debate?
We'll let her rip.
If I'm picking the restaurant after the debate, that's bad.
Why?
What is up with these people? Was Ron DeSantis sort of like low-key admitting to like concerns over IBS or something?
He's like, I'm a boob everywhere.
And then then just game on, let her rip. What is going on with you after the debate?
Well, he wanted Taco Bell at the beginning and then let it rip after, which my first problem is, you guys already know this about me. The debate was 2 hours long. You're going to eat before the debate. 2 hours later, you're going to go and eat again. I don't know. Maybe I don't eat enough throughout the day. You know, family always tells me I got to eat more than once to twice a day. But damn it, 2 times in 3 hours? I think that's when the bubble guts, and then also DeSantis is letting it rip just might happen later. Just my thoughts off the topic, just a little bit.
Dude, I would go to a bar immediately afterwards. I'd just be like, I can't do this. I mean, I get, like, whenever I do like a long shoot, I am very hungry afterwards or very tired. So you burn a lot of calories, you're sweating, you're engaged. I know maybe to you guys, it just comes naturally, but I'm hyper focused and I respect the job. But you guys might not. You guys might just like treat it like any other time during the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just don't have the energy to respect the job. Okay, we just got to get through the job. I'm kidding. Anyway,
as John says at midnight Eastern.
Exactly. Okay, so as I suspected, utter nonsense with the food and trying to like make personable some of the most reprehensible troglodytes in our country is a difficult ask. They did their best. I'm mostly worried now about their digestive systems. Anyway, why don't we jump into the substance? Obviously, one of the biggest issues right now in America, around the globe, is what's happening in Israel and Palestine. Of course, that was going to drive a lot of the conversation when it came to foreign policy. And this was a very foreign policy focused GOP debate. So the responses, really not surprising if you're familiar with today's GOP. Let's start off with Ron DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas. They're terrorists. They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe if they could. He cannot live with that threat right by his country. That Hamas should release every hostage and they should unconditionally surrender. I'm sick of hearing the media. I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for defending itself. We will stand with Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private. And I can tell you, as governor, I actually did something about it. Biden's neglect has been atrocious. We had Floridians that were over there after the attack. He left them stranded. They couldn't get flights out. So I scrambled resources in Florida. I sent planes over to Israel, and I brought back over 700 people to safety. There could have been more hostages had we not acted. And I'll tell you this, I met the first plane load when they came to Florida, and one of the mothers pointed to a 6-year-old daughter, and she said, my daughter had been saying the last 2 nights, Mommy, I don't want to hear any more bombs, no more rockets. I just want to get back to Florida.
Okay, so get the job done. Obviously, he talked about it obviously from that one perspective. They went through most of the candidates and it was largely the same, perhaps even more bloodthirsty. Let's roll a little montage for you.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas. They're terrorists. They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe.
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them, finish them.
I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border. And then I'll tell him as president of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border.
There was even more of that, but you get the idea. A lot of people have got to die. And, I, for the last 3 months or so, I haven't really been following the news so much, except for perhaps on this issue, because it's so big that it transcends anything else. If you just decided to tune into this debate and you had not been following everything that had happened, and you were just going by the way they were talking about it, you would have a view of the nature of the conflict and who has died that would be a little bit out of line with reality. And what I found interesting, we're gonna get to the one acknowledgement of Palestinian deaths that came from the moderators. But aside from that, and we will play that for you, there was no acknowledgement by the candidates. That's perhaps not surprising. They are Republicans. But even from the moderators, it was entirely what we are going to say and do to support the hunt for Hamas. That was it. No need to acknowledge any Palestinian deaths. Nothing about, the particular nature of the war, how it might go in the future. It was hyper specific. And I understand why they would want it to be for their base. But this was not a Fox News debate. It seemed weird to me that Welker and Holt had no interest in contextualizing the conflict even a little bit. What do you guys think?
Well, the question was, what would you say to Benjamin Netanyahu, which is just, I mean, from your perspective, probably just enough rope to hang themselves with. And they took that rope, and in your opinion,
I understand that, but the conversation about this topic went on for a fairly significant chunk. It might have been the single longest topic that was discussed at this debate. And aside from, well, why don't we actually play the question to Chris Christie about a Palestinian child who died in America? It was the only acknowledgement of those sorts of deaths. Let's play that.
Governor Christie, and considering what he just said, you led a state with a sizable Muslim population. Last month, as you know, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy was killed in Illinois by his landlord. His mother was also stabbed more than a dozen times in what has been charged as a hate crime. What do you say to Muslim Americans who are also feeling afraid for their safety right now?
Lester, I'm the only one on the stage who's actually had experience in dealing with this. I was appointed by President Bush to be the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. And when I took over that job after the September 11th attacks, I had to deal with a situation in our state that was explosive. We're the most ethnically diverse state in this country. And so first, we heard credible reports about Jewish students and synagogues being threatened in our state in the aftermath of 9/11. We made sure that we sent federal agents to those synagogues and we protected them, and the same thing should be being done now. At the very same time, I personally went from mosque to mosque in New Jersey and met with the leaders of those mosques and with the members of the mosques. And I said to them, law enforcement is on your side to protect you, regardless of your religion, if you are going to comply with the law. And we developed fabulous relationships with Muslim Americans all across the state of New Jersey, and we stopped any hate crimes that were going on either against Jewish Americans in New Jersey or Muslim Americans in New Jersey. It takes leadership, Lester, to know how to do this. You must work with both sides. Both sides need to know it, but let us never have a false moral equivalence between Hamas and Hezbollah and the Jewish people. The Jewish people stand for right and justice, and Hamas and Hezbollah stand for death.
Okay, so that I think there wouldn't be any debate is probably the most reasonable or empathetic response from any of those on the stage, even though, again, he didn't directly talk about that murder that had taken place in America. But aside from that, I don't know if there was any acknowledgement through the entire course of the conversation about Israel, Palestine, a topic that they return to every once in a while in comments later on in the debate, about the more than 10,000 deaths. And it just seems utterly bizarre. Not that they would avoid it, but that the moderators would do virtually nothing to make sure that the audience has that context.
Well, John, you said other than that. That included. That had nothing to do with the question. When did he mention the boy that was killed in his?
He talked about anti-Islamic hate crimes.
Yeah. What does that have to do with the boy?
He did in general.
That was what the question was about.
That's why I'm giving him a bit of credit. The framing of their questions was, what do you tell Benjamin Netanyahu? That's their way of engaging these guys about their position on Israel. They didn't do, as John points out, any follows to be like, what about the 10,000 Palestinians who have died as a result of this attack? When you're saying, because all those guys artfully said, and women and Nikki Haley artfully said, finish the job, wipe them off the map. That's what they started with. And then 3 sentences later says, I'm talking about Hamas. Normal people would go like, so what about the Palestinians? What about all the Palestinians living around the sides of Hamas that are being used as human shields against them by Hamas? And the Israeli government is killing by the, as I said, 10,000s to kill 48 operatives from Hamas. There was none of that follow-up, as John points out. But the next 2 questions were, what do you do about anti-Semitism that's growing? And followed by, what do you do about anti-Islamic hate that's growing as a result of it? So I think, and that was the reason for bringing up the kid who was killed. He missed saying a sentence that was like, that was like, I am sad that child is dead. And that is just as I agree with you, an unforced error for Chris Christie. But at least he has a record of, and he's on record saying, listen,
He's not making the mistake of saying, I only feel bad for the victims of anti-Semitism. He's not making the mistake of saying, I only feel bad for victims of Islamophobia. He said, after he said, mysteriously, he got the job on 9/10. 9/11 happened the day later, kind of making him a suspect in 9/11. I think John points that out. Look at his face. But after that, he went through and said both of those things are bad. And I have a track record of fighting against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which I think should be on as many people's mouths, coming out of as many people's mouths as possible right now.
Yeah. Yeah, whereas Ron DeSantis, like I believe the only reference to Islamophobia by a candidate was so-called Islamophobia, amidst all of them completely having no interest whatsoever in 10,000 dead. For a group of people who are going to spend a significant portion of the debate talking about how much they care about the lives of children, the fact that thousands of children are dead apparently doesn't bother them whatsoever. Believes that Islamophobia is not a thing. It seems like a great demonstration that it exists in certain forms. But
John,
but anyway,
even talking about them as victims cowering in libraries at school, and then never talk about their own track record on just like garden variety school shootings that they do nothing about. Like that was the tone deafness I also heard in that.
You know, and I also, let me know if you think that this is going too far, because obviously if we can't even expect one of the three moderators to mention the passage of 10,000 dead, then we can't expect what I'm about to say. But since anti-Semitism is a very significant issue, we've seen, online massive amounts of anti-Semitism. You can expect, as they pointed out, on campuses and things like that too. It is somewhat convenient that all of a sudden some of these Republican presidential candidates suddenly care about anti-Semitism. Where were they when people were marching and saying the Jews will not replace us? How many of them have gone on the shows or and participated with people who have often preached incredibly anti-Semitic comments? It is a significant strain of the modern conservative movement, and it almost never gets acknowledged, certainly not shouted down because they don't want to burn their own base. But all of a sudden, after the Hamas attack, suddenly they care about it a lot. Maybe that's a context that they would never add, but I think it would make for a pretty fascinating conversation.
Well, the one thing we were able to see throughout this debate is the way that they don't care about things from omission. Let's keep it real. So from not talking about those things, then of course they can act like it doesn't exist, or it's selective. So Brett, you talked earlier about how this is a job interview. So you just maybe not tell them about some of the things that you had in your previous job or your experience, or things you probably don't care about that you probably should care about as you come into this job. And then as the job of the moderator, not actually asking them that, because I guarantee you they didn't have to be asked about the violence going on and the anti-Semitism and the Jewish folks that were brutally murdered. Didn't have to be asked about because it's right there and we should be talking about it, as they should. But why can't they talk about it? The problem is it gives too much humanity to the folks that are being killed. It just is. There's humanity for certain folks and not for others when it comes to our politicians. And not because they have principles. Because look, this is not a Republican thing. It's a Democratic and Republican thing. I was thinking the entire time they were talking about how they're hell-bent on bombing more, killing many people as possible, acting like there's not innocent people that they're killing. As it was going through that, I was like, well, wait a second. When is somebody going to say, so you're in support of Joe Biden, President Biden, and his mission right now? Am I correct? Because you're supposed to always be in opposition to what the current president is if you're running for president in the opposition party. So you agree with him on this. You have to, right? Because he's doing exactly what anyone else would be doing as far as the folks that are on stage and trying to get into office at the same time. So if you're on board with that, at least acknowledge, as far as leadership goes in this country, this is the way it'd be going no matter what. But they still have to try and find some kind of divide, but there isn't. It's just the way it is.
Except for Ron DeSantis, who says, I scrambled some jets. And he said, did you notice that Ron DeSantis goes, I scrambled jets to go to Israel to pick up people after the attack. And then he follows it up with, and thanks to me, there are fewer hostages than there could have been, even though the attacks were days old by the time his jets got there. Yeah, he basically says he saved hostages, which he absolutely did not. That is insane, unhinged, and ridiculous.
He was talking about the New York Jets, right?
It made no sense substantively, but it did remind me that Ron DeSantis is a guy who is really, really invested in sending people in planes from one place to another. He shows a level of interest in transportation that Pete Buttigieg never did before he was put in charge of that department. Let me just say, maybe that's what he's looking for in the next Trump administration. Anyway, there's a lot more to get to, and we're going to dive into more of this after a short break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to TYT's GOP debate coverage. If you're just joining us now, this is likely to be the last election in American history, the last debates then. So we figured we would cover all of them, but we're very glad to have you here. This is a public stream, but many of you might already be members. But whether you are or not, do you know that you actually have an opportunity right now for discounted yearly membership? If you go to tyt.com/GOP live, or scan the QR code that we should have available, then you can get a discount on annual membership to take advantage of this special event that we're doing right now. We're gonna dive into more of the content of the debate in just a sec, but I wanted to respond to some of your comments first. I saw a few funny ones, and it's been months since I got to read the live comments, so I'm having fun with this. In the members' comments, Seth said, this is referencing the video of what the candidates would eat before the debate. Quote, if he had a choice, doesn't Tim Scott get to choose what he has for dinner? That is a great point.
I think they all were basically saying like, my wife stops me, or not Tim Scott, but like, if I had my choice, I'd be like you guys eating burger chips or whatever normal people eat. But I got to stay healthy, so I eat asparagus so my pee smells weird. Tim Scott for president.
He's been on McDonald's a couple of times. There was another video he was talking about he wanted to go to McDonald's and he's in the middle of Iowa, as if there are no McDonald's in the middle of whatever the hell state he was in. Also, I think Vivek pointed out the fentanyl that he slipped into Big Macs. That was also what Tim Scott wanted. Look out for the fentanyl in Big Macs, according to Vivek.
I think the reference to the Big Macs is an appeal to Trump voters, because Trump is always talking about how much he loves McDonald's. Anyway, I Am Sock says, who calls their stomach the apple cart? That is a great point.
Overturn it.
It's overturned and then let her rip. Run for cover when he lets her rip. Savitas Vox says, are you telling me the pro-life party is cool with thousands of dead kids? I don't know. They didn't find it to even be a topic worthy of mentioning. But anyway, over on Twitch, DeWoo's been here for 28 months. Says, woo, missed the main show, but I'm here now. We're very glad to have you here. Felicity says, the only thing that brings joy right now is seeing Brett's lights in the background. Aww. His little Christmas display. That is nice. I like that. So festive. Let's see. Mad Max says, Christie was the best at accepting non-authoritarianism. He remains to me the most reasonable. I mean, I don't know if any of us think that he was the winner of this debate, but and I'm not saying he's great or anything, but to me at least, by far the most reasonable on a number of different topics. And I Am Sock says there was a TikTok ad during a break, 100%. Oh, interesting. Let's finish with this question from Brooke Marks on Twitch, who says, hello, producers. I'd like to know what the hosts' pre-show meals were and what their post-show meal will be, please and thank you. What is it, guys? I'm assuming enchiladas.
Jayar?
Well, the sandwiches is my favorite thing in the world, but it was a wrap though this time, not the bread. Panini pressed though, it was a Southwest panini pressed roll wrap thing, whatever the hell you call it. My next meal, my post debate meal will be tomorrow morning. I'm not eating more crap.
So sensible, it makes me so mad. You're so responsible with what you eat. I hate it. JR's the only person who loses weight when he doesn't work out. It makes me so angry.
I just don't want to overturn the apple cart, and I don't want to let it rip.
Ron DeGassis too. John, what's yours?
No, you first, bro.
All right. Before this, so I ordered a sandwich with everybody else at the studio, but I had a little like nose burning coffee thing, so I didn't want to come in the event. I was sick. So I just had basically replicated that. I had sandwiches and chicken noodle soup.
It's lovely.
It was delightful. I got a cup of tea and like a bag of Vapos. Like I like to attack any perceived illness. I like to preemptive strike with as much vitamin C, gargle a bunch of pineapple juice, basically call a bunch of grandmothers and be like, all right, what do we do, ladies?
I agree. No, attack it. No, treat it like you're a Republican candidate for president. Go after it, shoot the hell out of it, do everything
Stone
you can
cold
to it.
dead It'll be the last thing they do.
Yeah. Let's just talk about this forever.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I'm staying in a hotel in Manhattan, and there's this pizza place, Joe's Pizza, that has like massive lines. So I stood for like 40 minutes and got way too many slices of pizza for one person. So that was my before meal, and it will be my later meal, and I might or might not let it rip. Anyway, with that said, we've got more important things to talk about, everyone. So the candidates got into it, not only on substance, but also with each other. There weren't that many great attack lines that really stood out, but there was one from Ramaswamy. Let's go to that.
Now, in terms of what I would tell the prime minister, no. In fact, I would go one step further. The founding vision of Israel was based on the idea that they don't want to depend on anybody else's sympathy or direction in defending themselves. So what I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as president of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border. That's his responsibility. This is our responsibility. That's how we move forward. But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Corrupt politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. And Joe Biden sold off our foreign policy. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. That's why we're sending $200 billion back to that same country. The fact of the matter is the Republican Party is not that much better. You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a multimillionaire. So I think that that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first, or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case, we've got two of them on stage tonight.
Ramaswamy, thank you.
He really wanted to get that dig in on Ron DeSantis, and I actually liked it. It was my favorite comment that he made. Really fast, I want to say substantively that he is not a neocon, and I know that because he says it over and over, despite the fact that he has called for massive mobilization of soldiers at the southern border, building a border wall at the southern and the northern wall as well. And presumably military contractors would make no money off of any of that, or building 20% more ships for a Navy. No one would make any money off of that. And I know it because he says he's different in some way. But he was just trying to, I guess, in a not even that subtly misogynistic way, attack Nikki Haley and point out the Ron DeSantis bootgate. What did you guys make of that?
Ron didn't get a chance to respond, right? Go ahead, Brett.
Well, I thought it was amazing because he didn't know whether people heard his other dig at Ron DeSantis. So like 45 minutes later in the debate, did you guys notice that he went back to it again? He's like, there's two people here in with his like poofy, weird hairdo, being like, there's two people here that definitely have tall heels. Did everyone see the meme? Did I meme well? I mentioned Rogan earlier. Did I meme well enough?
When Nikki Haley responded to his comment and said something about what her heels were, he was like, no, but there's a second one. He definitely wanted that credit. Ron DeSantis, do you think that it was wise on his part to just stay out of it and hope that people forget about that moment?
Yes. It's the one smart thing I think, at least recently, somewhat recent history, that Ron DeSantis has pulled off. Sometimes, and also when there's the thing, you can tell how much these guys are coached. Tim Scott being number one in my brain. But in any debate, you can tell how much they're coached and how they're trying to stay within the game plan. So they obviously told Ron DeSantis, yo, if somebody comes for you, because they might, just stay looking straight. The guy can be right next to you, and you see literally in the split screen this guy's face bobbing in your ear, and he's just It just doesn't look like he's attached. I get the purpose for saying he shouldn't be engaging or turning this way and getting a fighting, because it looks like you're getting into petty arguments when you're supposed to be, prestigious and like a presidential type of looking guy. But he just looked like he didn't know what was going on, or he's just waiting for a chance to say something else and it's just digging in his ear. It just doesn't come off looking right. And I've gotten to the point, because I'm pretty sure that Ron DeSantis is not going to get this nomination. I've gotten to the point where I'm beginning to feel sorry for him. He has no idea what's going on. He has no idea why he looks as bad as he does. And the things that they they've been telling him to say, the one-liners, the stone cold dead, all that stuff, it ain't working. It's not working. And honestly, I don't think anything he would do would work. It just doesn't work for him. It's just one of those just bad luck things. He just doesn't have it.
I just got to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy for a second. Yeah. Man, is he annoying. He's the worst. He is extra. He's too much. He needs to just take it down a notch. He's just grating and annoying. And he's going to talk about Nikki Haley's heels and even Ron DeSantis' heels. But that guy had on the biggest dancing shoes for that answer that I've ever seen. He is tiptoeing and doing this crazy footwork because this guy is trying to tell everybody that he has a new initiative called the No to Neocons initiative, where he wants to be the guy who's not interventionist. But he is saying that we beef everything up, and he's saying we need to support Israel because he knows that he can't give on that thing. That's like the one thing he can't say, and it'll get him canceled in the Republican Party. But the way, the insulting, slimy, gross way that he talks about American support for Israel is, I just think that Israel needs to be able to take care of itself. I would tell Bibi, you go do it. He wants a bellicose stance. He's not going to be able to divorce American support for Israel on the international stage. No one's going to drive a wedge between that. But he needs to do this stupid, crappy, like branding line nobody picks up on, where he's saying he's the non-interventionist one, and it was gross. It was misogynistic against Nikki Haley. The only thing that was kind of funny about was with Ron DeSantis, who's pathetic, but no one heard it anyway.
The way that he tried to dance around that of saying that they have a right, but also a responsibility. It was this like paternalistic thing being used to, without being explicit, imply less intervention. That the intervention in terms of billions of dollars would definitely come. I don't know if anybody remembers, but there was a time when in a prior election, they asked all the Republicans, you all say we shouldn't do foreign aid, but you definitely support aid for Israel. Would you cut that as well? And Rand Paul was the only person that said that he would cut that as well. And even he had to backtrack a day or two after because the response from the Republicans was so negative to that. So Ramaswamy, maybe if it was totally up to him, would be consistent ideologically on that, but I don't actually see that happening. And his position on these issues is so ridiculous. Like, yes, Nikki Haley might ideologically have some things in common with Dick Cheney, and certainly the neocons caused a lot of issues, and he calls them bloodthirsty for that. But he's in a way totally apathetic to massive amounts of blood, not only in Israel, because he was one of many who didn't even see fit to mention the fact that 10,000 people are dead. He's not bloodthirsty. He just doesn't care if thousands of people die. But he would also apply that in a way that many of the others on the stage wouldn't to Ukraine as well. He doesn't give a damn about civilians being killed. He doesn't care about Ukrainian soldiers. He doesn't care about the fact that a lot of Russian soldiers are dying from this conflict. And so he might not be bloodthirsty, but he seems utterly apathetic to apocalyptic amounts of death happening. I don't know if that's better for young Republicans. I don't know.
Shouldn't be.
Yeah, they don't want to think about it. It's not that, and that's half of politics anyway, is knowing just what to say, what not to say. And he's just not going to say it. And as you pointed out earlier, there's no one's going to call him out for that framing or anything like that. I mean, he just wants the points for the branding, because 100% of it, like Vivek Ramaswamy's not going to be the next president of the United States. I don't think he'll ever be president of the United States. He wants to make millions and millions of consulting dollars after he's able to to establish himself and sell millions and millions of dollars worth of books. That's it.
Yeah, books, and he'll probably start a podcast or whatever. He's going to make some sort of right-wing media company or something like that.
He's worth like $90 million or something like that.
Yes, but never underestimate how significant of a hole all of these people have that billions of dollars can't fill. We're talking about him, and you had larger points to make about Ramaswamy. I haven't had a chance to weigh in because I haven't done the prior debate. So I'll just say he's basically Ben Shapiro, isn't he? Like, he talks really fast, and he gives the impression that he understands what he is talking about. And he is technically younger than other people who do the thing that he's doing. And yet he like tries to use that to imply that he's representative of a younger generation. He says the word generation more than all the rest of them combined. But is he? Like, he's representative of, 22-year-old libertarians, but he doesn't believe that climate change exists. His position on abortion is wildly out of step with any Gen Zer. His issues on labor, nothing in common with these. He's on TikTok and he's technically 38. And aside from that, how is he more in line with young conservatives than Ron DeSantis? They both talk about woke stuff all of the time, but that hardly makes them dissimilar from most other Republicans. He wants to imply that he has this close connection to younger voters, that he can draw them in, and yet he disagrees with wildly popular stances amongst younger Republicans and independents. So I've never understood that attempt to brand himself in that way.
Early on, he was better at talking on camera. That's it. Mm-hmm. He had a good energy. He had a new message. He was trying, in the early debates, I pointed out that he really locked into the messaging that Ben Shapiro type generation locks onto. But and he had all the buzzwords. He was there to appeal to the crypto bro libertarian, like, I have 4 thoughts about politics, but I think they free me up to be the smartest person in the world about politics. He is the best at finding new framings on things of anybody up there. Everybody else up there, when they talk, frequently the people I'm trying to find things to give him credit for. People just glaze over. It's like, oh, here's another thing where it's like, oh, America should be strong. We need to support our allies and attack our enemies. China sucks. He's the guy who's like in the middle of a Ron DeSantis answer about fentanyl, when Ron DeSantis did here's a touching story of a person I know who overdosed. Ramaswamy gets the credit for that story because he says it sounds like they were poisoned, and it's not an overdose. People are poisoning. It's bioterrorism. That's a new angle on it. He used the beginning of this debate, by the way, to go after the media itself, which is, I don't think, something a lot of people besides Trump have ever really done, and certainly not the way he did it.
That's a good point. Actually, why don't we go to that? Ramaswamy early on in the debate attacking the moderators.
Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, we've got Kristen Welker here, you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real, or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Ross.
This is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story. And they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why Audience, let's not do this.
So look, strategically, it makes a lot of sense for him to do that because everyone who has any chance of voting for him already despises the media. They have somehow convinced themselves that Kristen Welker and Lester Holt are rabid left wingers. That doesn't make sense to me. And we need accountability. We can't, have these debates being moderated by people who make big mistakes. We need people with an unimpeachable track record when it comes to the news, like Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. They would never make a big consequential mistake or spread misinformation willingly over and over and over again for their own financial advantage. Anyway, look, again, none of the people who might vote for him are going to think about how utterly ridiculous that premise is. And the moderators, by the way, were not ready to be attacked. Kristen Welker just sort of grinned through it, had no response to that. I don't know what she could have said, but what did you guys make of that?
Yeah, this is the thing. This is what Vivek does. And it goes with that moment, maybe the previous ones, maybe some other debates. Vivek creates these moments that you remember for that moment. And once that moment is passed, once he's done insulting or someone gets into a fight with him and go, oh man, someone's fighting, Vivek's getting into it and he's going really fast. Afterwards, when you stop and think about what he said and whatever else he's gone on a deep dive about, eventually you think about it and go, he didn't say anything. or what he said wasn't real. It wasn't based in reality, or he can't do that. Whatever it is that he's talking about. And after it makes a point then, it creates an impact. Afterwards, what is it that he did in that first debate? I remember people were saying that he won it. Do you remember specifically what he was talking about that won him that debate? No, you don't. You remember then, you don't remember after because it doesn't stay. Vivek says something and you go, oh man, that's something. And then about an hour later, you go, wait, what was it Vivek said again? Because he's just annoying. It ends and he's just annoying. He's just being an a-hole. He's just being the guy that just bugs people. And he knows he bugs Nikki Haley more than anybody else. So he keeps bugging her because that gets him attention. As you said, Brett, from the beginning, maybe all he's looking for is the attention to then sell the books or be a consultant or do anything else he's trying to progress his next level of his political career to make more money off of suckers. But that's all he needs. The moment, if you remember his name, you're not gonna forget his name, but you may forget everything else that he said.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. He's just, and this happens. He if this was any other cycle where Trump wasn't in there dominating as the front runner, Vivek Ramaswamy would lead by 15%. 2 months ago, he would lead
the way Ben Carson did, and Herman Cain, and all of them had their moment in the sun.
Mike Gravel, even like these guys went into the lead for a while because they were that guy Ron Paul had those moments where that guy, just it takes so little. I mean, and in the end of it, there's not many moments from debates that anyone remembers, but you do remember what you, as you said, think about them. And there are many, many debates, and there should be, and there have to be, whether it's Republican or Democratic Party, whether there's an incumbent or not an incumbent. I think that's the thing that we develop an opinion, we keep it, we hone it. And there's usually not like a giant gaffe, but we remember the vibes over time, whether they're sustainable as a person to be in the bully pulpit.
Let me ask for your evaluation at another attempt by Moan. If we could get SOT 7 ready. They were talking about TikTok, and there was another little dust up between Ramaswamy and Haley. Let's run that.
In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth. The easy answer is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app. We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually transferring U.S. data to the Chinese.
I had actually forgotten that she said you're just scum, but maybe that'll get through to some people. But anyway, what do you think about that substantively as a point that she had criticized him for being on the platform, and he said, yeah, well, your daughter's on it.
It doesn't even make sense within his argument. Their argument is that the fact that it's out there means kids are going to be on it. And their argument is that you should not allow it to be out there because kids are going to find a way, and it makes parents' lives harder. Tim Scott has a whole parents' bill of rights, which they always write, which is don't also play video games. But that it doesn't make sense. And let me tell you that she won the hell out of that interaction. Every parent in America looks at this smarmy little schmuck who's calling her a bad mom on television because the kid has TikTok. Every parent is in Nikki Haley's shoes right now in America, trying to figure out whether TikTok, Facebook, any of that works. And this psychopath, this guy who prides himself to be this 38-year-old prodigy, is doing what? Looking at what teenagers are doing on TikTok, you pervert, you child sex trafficking pervert. And that's the rabid Republican Party. And I don't think it's weird for me to go there if they're going to.
I just wish
we're not making a specific factual claim there, just to be clear.
I know, but it's my opinion.
It is very weird that he would even know
non-satirical opinion that Vivek Ramaswamy's probably a pervert, like a weird creeper pervert. I'm a comedian.
I just wish that she would have fully said the line. That's the thing. I think she, you have this moment, and it was natural. That's what I really appreciated about was he actually angered her. So in her response, that was actually knee-jerk response. And she wanted to say, keep my daughter's name out your MFing mouth. Straight Will Smith. But she's like, wait a second, there was a slap that followed or was preceded that. So I've got to do that, right? So in the middle of her saying it, she's thinking, no, I can't do the Will Smith. So she had that weird, awkward, keep my daughter's name out your voice or something along those lines, because she couldn't give the direct line. And the best way to say it is exactly what Will Smith said. And you know what? It would have worked out. She would have had a hands-down win of that debate. It has to be something like that means nothing. It doesn't matter if she would have said it that way, but it would have helped.
Yeah, something really important. First of all, if you want to become a member, do annual membership. Today, it's we're doing 24% off of annual membership. So there will be a QR code at the bottom as I say this. So scan that and become a member. 24% for 2024, our election coverage. I just want everybody to do that. We'll keep that up as I say. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that she came off as more of like a colloquial, actual mom? Because like when my dad was like, he's like, oh, you took no more time than the man in the moon. Like he always had these statements that I was just like, I don't think that's the words that you're trying to say. It makes them folksy and more accessible when you say, keep a name at your voice.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, look, I'm on her side and it seemed like the audience was there. I felt in her body language and her tone an excitement at the fact that he had brought up her daughter. I think that she loved that he had brought up his daughter because that puts her on such firm, obviously sympathetic ground. And I would have avoided, like she was sort of leaning forward in a way, like don't make it so clear that you love that he just said that. That would be my only note.
Yeah, you think it was a little planned? Is that the idea, John? You think it's a little bit like not planned?
I think it was a response, but I think that she was just very clearly giddy at the fact that he had put her in this position where she almost couldn't lose.
Like the moment when Pelosi and Schumer were having a press conference with Trump and he's like, this is my government shutdown. I own it. And you just saw Nancy and Chuck just go, I think we should leave the room. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. It's yours. It's you own it. You own it. He said it. Like that's what Schumer did. I saw a little bit about that, but it was also like, Mama's gonna bop you one, as my dad used to say. I'll bop you one.
Yeah,
exactly. With that said, we do have to take another break. When we come back, we'll be responding to some of your comments. So keep sending those in and jumping into some of what Donald Trump was doing during this debate. We'll have those clips for you after this. Welcome everyone to what could be one of the last debate reactions and what could be one of the last elections ever, our final election coverage. I'm John Iadarola, Brett Erlich, and Jayar Jackson are here. Thank you guys. We've got more to talk about, but first, some comments. And the first will be a super chat from Dami Mommy Matrix, who says maybe the reason why DeBubble Guts looks so uncomfortable on camera and around kids is because he needs to let it rip. IBS be damned. Now that would explain the smile that he does for the camera. Man, he is just bad at this. He is just so bad at this. Anyway, Corporations Ate My Baby says Brett has it right. Ramaswamy wants consulting money, 100%. Killjoy says, is her daughter running for president? Such a weird attack. So why would you do that? I understand that he probably has the feeling that his base is deeply suspicious, at the least, if not hostile towards women in general. So attacking a young woman is probably going to play well with them. But Insane Maniac says you never talk about a person's family. It just makes you look bad. It just does. AH says, I wonder how Ron is going to pay for his 600 ship plan. I doubt we're going to get details on that. And Charlotte, welcome to membership on YouTube. Thank you for being here. We appreciate all of our members. If you'd like membership and would like a nice discount on it, then that is available to you. You can go to tyt.com/GOP live for a special discounted annual membership coming during this live event. Okay, that said, Donald Trump not on the debate stage. He is still abstaining from showing up. I actually find it to be pretty surprising. You'd think eventually he'd want to show up, but he's doing his own events. And that remained true tonight. So why don't we start off with one of his favorite topics, the legal assaults against himself and his family.
They're really great at cheating in elections, but we're not going to let that happen. They put you, me, my family, and our country through hell. But in the end, they will fail and we will win because we will never stop fighting to save the America we love.
I want to give him a little bit of credit for adding in that they put me, you, and my family through hell. He doesn't actually believe that they're coming after his base. He doesn't care. He cares about himself. But he did make a significant part of the event about what he always does. It's about the legal challenges, and that must be front of mind for him. I mean, we had Ivanka testifying just earlier today. We had the sons within the last week. That's obviously a big thing that he's thinking about. And it actually kind of got referenced during the debate with Chris Christie saying that a guy who's going to be spending all of his time and all of his thought, trying to stay out of prison, out of a courtroom, can't lead the country. It was not a thing that he was attacked, that Trump was attacked on much by the other candidates. They want to, stay as hands off as possible against the challenges because they don't know exactly how it's going to go. But what do you think about Donald Trump still using that as a big applause line?
So I tried to watch them both simultaneously, and it was like a horrible, torturous, Clockwork Orange Ludovico technique. And both myself and I believe Marissa Matthews, our producer, had to do both, and she deserves a medal of some sort. It was horrible. But yeah, so essentially what he did, and he's been doing, is doing this counter programming where he knows when the debate is. And as you mentioned, John, you kind of have this, you said you had this feeling that you don't fully understand why he hasn't joined yet. Is that what I got from you?
Not that I don't understand it. I'm just saying that very rarely does he surprise me. And I expected that this would be the same sort of bluff as we've seen in past elections. Back in 2016, he said he was not going to participate, and he only skipped one debate. He participated in all the rest. I thought that eventually he would show up. But in my defense, I also thought that one of the reasons he would show up is that those trying to ostensibly beat him in the primary would attack him. And there isn't that much of it despite his ongoing lead. So again, they're sort of making it so that he doesn't need to show up on the debate stage.
Right, it's a power is power moment, and it's a power move not to show up there. And he did the gambit initially, like I guess he did in 2016, and did a wait and see attitude toward it. And the waiting, he's seen. He has grown his lead in the time as they've, maybe eventually they will consolidate enough Republicans and many of them will drop out. But on the other hand, he's going and doing these events like we just shown in Hialeah, where he's trotting out like really old, boring, weird lines. That's all it was for many, many hours. Occasionally taking a dig at people, occasionally trotting out a new line, but it really was 2 full hours, which is as long as the debate lasted, but uncut, commercial free. So as they went to the commercial at the boring parts of the debate, maybe people would switch over to C-SPAN. But if he's drawing 100,000 people on C-SPAN, he deserves a medal. But as the fundamentals of debating are, if you are in the lead, you should avoid debates, because there's just something about the human mind where if they see you on stage with other people, there is just naturally a tightening. It might not tighten all the way, but that is proven. Like they teach you that when you study politics, that you should definitely avoid debating your opponent if you can. And one thing we've learned over the past year is that Trump absolutely can.
He's able to, but this is the thing, and the reason he played, we talked about the same tired, played out lines that he's been running since he started this whole thing before his first run at this, is because they don't really listen. Like, I'm a good MAGA minion, so if I'm sitting in the crowd watching him reiterate the same thing I'm sure I've heard him say before, and it absolutely means nothing, and now he's saying we're going to make sure we stop that stolen election from happening. Okay, why should I trust you to stop a stolen election from happening again? Because I believe you for some reason. If you weren't able to stop it the first time, bro, what did you re-up on? What did you rearm yourself with to allow you to be able to stop it? You went through 18 different cases through the correct legal ways and got shut down on all those. Then you went for the next approach with radicalizing people to the degree of violence. So what? And that didn't work either. They thought it would, but that didn't work either. So what is it about now, Trump, that's going to make you stop all these stolen elections? Because every time you lose or anyone else loses on the Republican side, it's a stolen election. Shouldn't they start asking those questions? They don't listen to even what he's saying. It's just he's talking and I'm nodding my head. Mm-hmm. Where are the results, bro? You can stop the next stolen election? Why? Since we're believing the BS, why can he stop the next stolen election? They don't ask those questions, even if they're on his side.
It's just shocking to me that it still works. Like, oh my God, this is like, that's the same conversation we've been having for years.
Yes.
He started off, as Marissa notes through her notes, with Trump Jr. warms up the crowd by getting everybody to chant lock him up about Fauci. So we don't have that. We don't have to play it, but like that happened. He goes over and he's like, he does this stuff about like recalling the night he lost the election. He's just talking about the same old. He goes after. I mean, people saw a video of him doing like the lifting of weights. Like, what is he doing? He's been doing that for months and months and months. He just is able to get news coverage and not lose anything in the polls, and if anything, gain stuff in the polls by just doing his stump speech.
Yeah,
and occasionally adding some new one-liners to see if he can work them into his stump speech. That is fascinating.
Yeah, he's like a musician from the 70s or an old school comic, and people just shout out like, "Hey, do the weightlifting." Yeah,
hit the watermelon. Do you think you do it, Gallagher? I've seen it 1,000 times.
Do the thing about the windmills. Do the windmills.
Do it.
The birds are coming into this.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And look, he'll occasionally try out something new, but like a comic, really, when he says something that gets boos, that's generally it. It's not a new, position. He tried it out. It didn't work. It's like a comic who is chasing the applause.
Yeah.
And yes, great point. How is it that suddenly he's going to have more control of the elections when it was stolen by the Democrats who were out of power federally, but now he's going to overpower the deep state when they're the ones that control the White House, let alone that some of the states that he lost were dominated by Republicans in multiple branches. None of it really makes sense. We're going to go again, because I didn't get to watch this live. He talked about the last election night, choosing to remind everyone of the fact that he lost epically in a long string of losses. Why don't we go to our SOT 7?
Television, and I loved seeing, and at 9 o'clock it was over, 10 o'clock it was really over, and then bad signals, we have found some additional votes. Oh, here we go. Then at 3:02 in the morning we saw some things happen, and then we watched it be stolen. We watched it be stolen. Very serious thing. And again, we can't have a country if we don't have borders and if we don't have elections. If we don't have fair elections, we can't have a successful border.
Yeah, what any of those things have to do with each other, I have no idea. Brett pointed out that just simply showing up at the debate stage could be a bad thing if you have a big lead. I have to imagine that it would be even worse for you when you can't make any sense whatsoever. Even when you are delivering almost the same exact lines that you always do, you can't have a sense, like a thread of common sense running through this now well-worn stump speech. But what do you think?
It's so bad. I mean, there's not much I can say about that, but like, it's sad that people are cheering that he's a loser. And you see that's almost at the end of his 2-hour speech. If you look at the people in the background, they're not even jazzed anymore. They're tired. Those folks haven't stood up for 2 hours in 10 years. And they're there in the background, except for that one dude who's always in the back. But that's that. I do want to, Jayar, what do you think?
Well, you know what comes next? I was going to say anybody that's listened to this guy's speeches, for maybe 6 of them, can be a speechwriter, because you just cut and paste that paragraph from that one and move it around, or he'll move it around as he goes off the cuff. So what comes next is a third world country. We're like a third world country. You believe that? Can you believe that they're coming after me and my family? That's then relates to all that part. And the criminal behavior, all these, it's the same things over and over and over again. So no, John, he doesn't. You said you can't see where these things connect. Neither can he. He's just whatever comes to his head. And that's not any attack on his mental state, the way some people are talking about, these old candidates. That's him just going through the motions. No matter what the job is, you can be working at fast food or you can be working as an accountant where it's more detailed things that you're doing. But eventually you become into a routine with your work. And it's just the way it is with him now. It's just routine. Because they're going to come out, they're going to yell, we're going to say lock them up, and we're going to say the next 4th, the 5th, and the 8th thing. And then I'm going to go home. He just needed to fill 2 hours to keep people from watching the Republican debate, and then at least either pay attention to some to him and then some to them, I guess. The whole objective is not to convince anyone at all. It's to just talk long enough to keep some attention away from them. That's all this was.
It's funny. Like, has a guy ever gotten more help from the people that, at least on paper, should want to beat him worse than anyone? Like, there was early on in the race some references by Chris Christie to how many times Donald Trump had been responsible for large-scale losses by the Republican Party. And there was a vague reference to it tonight. In fact, it might have been Ramaswamy, but he put it all on Ronna McDaniel. I think that Brett had mentioned that earlier, like years of losses by Republicans, like snatching defeat from, the grip of victory or whatever. But he's a massive defender of Donald Trump. And you can't admit specifically that he lost in 2020, because then you would be admitting that the election wasn't stolen. And so what should be the single largest argument against him, that he has been responsible over and over and over again for them losing not just the presidency, but also the Senate and also congressional seats. And they can't bring it up. And so you can go through a whole debate where they barely reference him. The most that they'll say is that he didn't get Mexico to pay for the border wall. And that's it. He just continues to get all of this assistance from the people who are supposed to be his opponents.
Right. Vivek says we're losers, but he doesn't connect it. Nikki Haley said that he was the right president at the right time, but it's not that time anymore. And Ron DeSantis pretty much said that Trump changed, and he's the guy who was taken in by that, wants to stay true to that message, but Trump has moved on and left us. That's the closest that anyone but Chris Christie gets to saying that Trump sucks. That is still on the stage. I want to talk about the big strong man, John. Let's please
more stuff happening. There's more stuff happening.
So why don't we go to that? Donald Trump has a lot of weird verbal tics, phrases that he likes. Why don't we return to one that occasionally pops up?
Thousands and thousands of young, strong men coming into our country. What's that all about? When you see from the Middle East, all over the Middle East, young, strong men, not to insult women, but young, strong men are flooding our country. They've got something in mind. There's something in mind. And in many cases, these are the same people that did the attack on Israel just a few weeks ago. These are the same people.
These are the same people. I don't even know what he's talking. He's obsessed with the idea of just like virile men with impressive upper bodies coming across our borders and doing something. Why is it that so many people in their prime of their life would come into America? Now, of course, he wildly overestimates how many people are coming from the Middle East, how many are coming across the southern border from the Middle East, let alone the fact that he's now implying that people from Hamas flew from the Middle East to Guatemala, walked across the southern hemisphere into America, and then returned just in time to perpetuate that horrific attack. It's not just fear mongering. It is uniquely Trumpian, weird fear mongering, like deeply uncomfortable, weird in a sexual way. I don't know, Brett. You were a big fan of this clip. What do you think?
I mean, I just love it. Big, strong men. It's so weird. It's strange because, yeah, he's jealous that our men aren't big and strong enough, which is just kind of mean. And then it reminds me of that, like, what was it? The cantaloupe calf guys that like Steve King was like, yeah. I mean, it's that. I don't know. I saw it happen. I wanted to know. Jayar, what did you think about it?
It was weird because I didn't watch any of it as it was happening live. But yes, it's a very Trumpian thing. It's almost expected. It's because they need to keep. He has, as we've known, there's a throwback to he adores old dictators and people who committed atrocities. So there was a big thing with folks and saying our guys are the strongest. Look at these strong, able-bodied white men. Yeah, that was the basis for a lot of these folks saying that's why they're superior to other nations. And look at our army. Look at this. He's still stuck in that mindset. So in order to still have this activation of we need to activate our young, strong men, we have to talk about how young and strong their men are, and look how strong and look how broad shoulders, and look at they can flex their pecs too. He has to break down all these things because again, he's just talking. His tangents, his side comments, his elaborations on things, it's whatever comes to mind. So if he needs to describe their Ripley muscles and their stature and their scowl over their face, look at their brow, it's so manly, he'll go into all that just to keep talking. So that's just what triggers him. That's what he thinks about. That's what he imagines. That's what he pictures. And of course, he's always tried to portray himself that way. So the next best thing is to say that that's who he controls. It's the biggest, strongest, manly men. It's the same thing.
Utterly bizarre. Anyway,
weird.
And yet they show up. They seem to enjoy it. I don't know if they show up in the crowds that they used to. I don't know if they're as enthusiastic about him as they were in past elections, and yet he is still lapping the field. Very bizarre. Jayar, you mentioned there that he likes to portray himself as being very physically capable, while also denigrating the other side. We have an example of that. Why don't we go to his commentary about Joe Biden?
A podium where these stairs are not obvious enough. Biden could never get off. No, but think of it. Here's a guy can't find or figure out a way to get off a stage with about 5 sets of stairs. I got one here, I got one there, I have one there, I have one here. And you could even jump off the front if you have to. He can't figure it out. So he can't find out how to get off the stage. And he would also, by the way, half of the times he falls. And listen.
Were they chanting Roomba? What is that a reference to?
How a Roomba, they pitch it as this amazing machine that can just let it go. And you assume it's just going to go like this and vacuum the whole floor. But it just kind of goes in random directions, bump into stuff, and then just goes at a random angle until 3 hours later, it finally makes its way back to the base. My mom got us a Roomba. They are calling him a Roomba.
They seem to not be sponsors of ours, I would guess, based on your commentary. Yeah, so Biden can't get down the stairs. And so thus Donald Trump is effectively Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's Mr. Universe, I guess.
Say it correctly, John. He can't get off the stairs. He said it 4 times. Am I right? Maybe 5.
That's so weird.
I was like,
come on, bro. We know what's happening here. Let's not act like we don't. Let's not act like they didn't know what was happening here. Come on, bro. If anything, I'm a little proud of him because back in 15, 16, whenever he was kicking the first field of 22 Republicans around, and he and who's the guy down in Florida? The idiot Rubio, and then their hand size comparison. Come on, bro! It was a literal measuring contest. If nothing else, he's reeled it back a little bit. At least he didn't talk about directly Joe Biden in his anatomy. They're focused too much on Hunter for that, so they at least give Joe Biden a break.
I've seen Hunters. That's weird to be able to say.
Yeah.
America.
By the way, we sort of quickly glossed over Ramaswamy asserting that the only reason we've given $200 billion to Ukraine is because Hunter Biden got a bribe back in the day. That is an interesting position to take. Sorry, you were about to say something.
I just say one really quick point. Is there's Donald Trump trying to say that he's like this guy who has mental and physical prowess when we've watched Trump slowly walk down a very gentle ramp in a way that is embarrassing, and be at that same speech, he literally went on for 2 minutes about it's America. All the people have been doing the deals lately. They're so stupid. They don't know anything. They're so stupid. We got dumb people on our side. And then he says, I go and I talk to the leaders over there, Xi and Kim Jong-un. And Kim Jong-un controls 1.4 billion people. He talks about how smart he is and how dumb everyone else is. And then he mixes up the leaders of North Korea and China. And no one in that crowd is
not one
gonna pick up on it, but he does those gaffes. So he's a hypocrite on top of all of the rest.
I think it's very easy for you to assert that that's him having Swiss cheese for brains, but you are discounting the possibility that he is just deeply, deeply racist and doesn't care.
But anyway, did he fall in love with one of them? He fell in love with someone and doesn't remember their name. That's like calling out the wrong name when you're trying to get off the stage.
By the way, you referenced him very carefully walking down that ramp. That to me is the only reason he made those comments about Joe Biden. His entire life is taking the things that he's been attacked for and putting them out onto everyone else. It's Anyway, with that said, we do have more to discuss. But for those of you who are not members, unfortunately, we're going to have to bid you adieu. But I do have a solution to that little problem. You can become a member. You've always been able to, but you haven't always been able to get such an amazing deal on annual membership. That is now available. You can go to tyt.com/GOP Live, become a member, get a nice little discount. And then on the other side of this break, you'll be able to hang out with us as we discuss potentially some more clips. We're also going to be running down our winners and losers from this debate. So you have all that and more to look forward to, but we'll see you on the other side. Welcome back, everyone. Well, not everyone. It's just us members, but welcome to the members only section of our response to the GOP debate. We're going to have a little bit of fun with a little bit more videos from Trump's counter programming. We're going to do our winners and losers. But first, we are going to respond to some of your comments. I wanted to thank the members' comments. Boomer Dragon Cat, who says, you guys are such a treat. I'll be going to sleep happy thanks to your camaraderie. Thank you. Naughtiest Maximus says, if only Haley had slapped Vivek like Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. I almost said, I am surprised that nobody has, now I'm not saying like has gone up and punched each other in the face, but like done a sort of false bravado thing of like getting in the face of another person on the debate stage. Like they have descended so much. I'm just surprised.
Well, Al Gore tried it, remember?
I don't remember
that. One, and God bless him. He got up he tried to loom over George W. Bush in a debate, and it backfired spectacularly because George W. Bush just kind of looked at him and like got visibly weirded out, just was a human in the moment and walked away. And that, there was a tangible downturn in people liking Al Gore.
Yeah. I do think though the parties are different. They're like on the right, they so love that sort of juvenile trolling stuff that I'm just surprised that like, I don't know, Ramaswamy hasn't done it to DeSantis. Or DeSantis is such a little weenie that you'd think someone would want to even performatively like clown him like that, but it hasn't happened.
Brett, I don't remember exactly that Gore moment, but it did remind me when you're talking about the looming and not aggressive necessarily, but potentially intimidating energy you're trying to pose in that. Trump did it when he was debating Hillary Clinton, and maybe if she had a similar reaction. Again, since I don't remember the Gore thing, I'm not sure if it looked like what Trump was doing, but he was pacing around her as she's answering questions, and menacingly, you could even say,
like a goon.
And, it could have been a simple, this guy's following me, like just point it out.
But I mean, that's I chalk that up to political talent, just the ability to be a person on a stage in the moment. It's very hard it's easy to say that you'll do it, but when you have to do it, you really have to execute it. And there are very few awesome, just freaking nailed it gotcha lines. One of the best in history is, what was his name? He ran with Dukakis, and he just goes to, there was a line invoked by Dan Quayle about Jack Kennedy, and this guy, the running mate of Michael Dukakis, looks at him and goes, I know Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was my friend, and you, sir, are no Jack Kennedy.
That's a classic.
Lloyd Benson.
Lloyd Benson, hell yeah.
Oh, look at Michael Schur up in here. Okay, with that, we should jump back into things. Donald Trump did not necessarily spend a lot of time at his event talking about the other candidates. I'm sure he considers most of them to be beneath his notice, but he did get in a few digs against Ron DeSantis. Let's watch.
Remember, you got to remember, we got 1.2 million more votes than Ron DeSanctimonious. You know that, right? Everyone says, oh, he did so well. He did well because I endorsed him. That's the only reason he was gone. But we got 1.2 million more votes than Ron DeSantis, as NBC called him the other day. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Ron DeSantis. That's called good branding, isn't it? Did we do a good job?
No, that's really bad. The DeSantis is so bad. And also, like, I'm gonna have to defend Ron DeSantis. He's comparing his performance in a presidential election year against the result in a midterm election for a gubernatorial race that obviously has some issues. But anyway, while he is sort of wrong about the facts there, he is still beating Ron DeSantis. He's beating him about as bad as he was several months ago, despite the fact that there's been multiple indictments between those 2 points. So I guess he gets to clown Ron DeSantis because DeSanctimonious can't do anything to catch up. What do you guys think?
Marketing. He said it. He goes, "Oh, we come up with some good lines. Yeah, we come up with some sayings and some slogans." You're literally pointing out that that's all he's got. Like it's. I feel like a bit of a repetitive mode here with how he literally doesn't say anything, but he does point out that what he is good at is coming up with lines for the people who follow him from the ends to the ends of the earth will listen to. That's a good one. You know, in NBC News it's called him Ron DeSantis too. Isn't that crazy? That's great. Okay. So I'm supposed to vote for you based off of that. How does that transfer into then me again have an issue with gas being $6.87 a gallon, student loan debt, healthcare, housing, wages? What the hell does that have to do with me? And again, the difference is he's found a way to flip the constituents on its head. The whole relationship between constituents and elected leaders. It's said that elected leaders represent the people. Instead, now we've got these people, MAGA people, representing Donald Trump. That's all they're doing. If he says he wins something, it's our job to get it for him. If he's upset about something, it's our job to help him out. If he's getting prosecuted for 91 charges and 4 indictments, it's our problem. We have to help him out. What the hell does that have to do? Did he share any of his money with you? Did he share any of his houses? Would he allow you to approach Mar-a-Lago with your dumbass? Hell no. But you're supposed to represent him. That's all he's pushing on them, and they bought it. He doesn't have to do anything else. He's got them.
I love these. Like I nailed it with the branding because I called him DeSanctimonious, and they accidentally, I guess, called him Ron DeSantis. It's like, when in the world has anyone heard someone else get your brand's name wrong and then say you nailed it? Like they got it wrong, you weirdo. Yeah. And then the other thing that I think is worth pointing out when he's talking about how he got I don't know if you mentioned this exactly, but the 1 million votes more is that in 2020 when Trump won, he says he got 1 million more votes than Ron DeSantis got in Florida when DeSantis ran in 2022 for governor. And that is absolutely true. So he is really good at listening to people who are like, you want this fact, you could say it over and over again. And he's like, yeah. And the fact that he chose to say that, he's like, I beat you in your own hometown. And another thing I noticed in the debate today is Ron DeSantis he's in Florida giving a speech in Florida, and he gives the first opening statement and everybody claps really loud. And then Nikki Haley goes, and from my ears, I heard that Nikki Haley got a larger round of applause in Florida than Ron DeSantis did. And that is embarrassing.
Changes the whole game.
Okay, well, she seems to be doing well. Maybe that will come into play as we move into our final segment. The third GOP debate now done. Who did well? Who improved their position? Who might be on the ropes? Here are our winners and losers. We sort of previewed this a little bit earlier on. So Brett, why don't you expand on what you had started to say? Who do you think was the biggest winner? Who do you think was the biggest loser?
Biggest winner for me is Nikki Haley. She showed composure. She was attacked, which is flattery on the stage. She was attacked by Vivek Ramaswamy, who called her Dick Cheney in heels. And then she used those heels to slash him in the throat. Vivek came off as too abrasive. I'd call him the loser in all of it. Well, I would call Tim Scott the loser, but it was so sad. Then like every time he finished giving his speech, the moderators were like, okay, thank God he's done talking. What do you think, Christie? But really, I think the loser for me is Vivek Ramaswamy. He was abrasive, like mean-spirited, long-winded, and attacked Nikki Haley's daughter, which Nikki Haley, for how she parented her own daughter, which is generally off limits, and Nikki stood her ground and got him back. And she sounded like, she had gravitas and more experience than all the rest of them in foreign policy, which was the main arena discussed for the most time on air out of any other issue. So I think winner, Nikki Haley, loser, Vivek Ramaswamy.
I think, Brett, you put it the reasons behind, because I agree with you, as we said earlier about Nikki Haley, similarly, but because when I'm watching these debates and I'm putting on my hat of if I'm supporting any of these folks, who is convincing me the most, and again, that was for me, Nikki Haley. But again, her policies suck. The things that she's perpetuating and saying that she's going to do, and the way that she's approaching all these things, they suck. But she has a grasp on the topics. She has been there to a degree, knows how, worked with an executive with the president, as disastrous as that was. She's done it at least. So there's that level of experience, at least when it comes to getting the job done, I guess. So as far as the losers go, I did have a bit of a shift. It's easy as Tim Scott, but was not the obvious answer here, because he even had an almost please clap moments, like, oh, he was joking with it. It was actually the best moment he had, sadly, was, oh, you guys are clapping before I even got a chance to say anything. It's going to be great. That actually was funny, because he sucks. But so the actual one, and this kind of came to mind now because of the way people are responding to him. It's Chris Christie. Not because he doesn't sound like he knows what he's talking about. Not because he didn't give answers that actually somewhat address the question most times, but because when he says those things and then he connects it to how Donald Trump is a mess, didn't follow through on promises, is destroying the party, and on top of that, the country. You know who doesn't want to hear that? Republicans don't want to hear that. Many Republicans hate Donald Trump, but they don't want to hear that he's the worst and bashing him when they know that he's probably going to be their nominee if he avoids jail. So he loses on that front because he's going after the kingmaker of the Republican Party, the king itself, actually, of the Republican Party. And you will always lose when you go after Donald Trump trying to talk to other Republicans. It just doesn't work out that way. There's been senators, there's been representatives, a few more of them, that have tried to go after Donald Trump. None of them are in office. None of them. That's what happens. Even up to Liz Cheney, they're not in office because you can't go against Donald Trump. As right as it is to do that, as a Republican, you're going to lose.
Yeah, I kind of feel similar. Like if there was any reason in the universe, then I would say that Chris Christie should be the winner, but that's just not a possibility. He can't win coming out of this because of where he's running. So I'm going to say, I guess, disagree a little bit. I'm probably going to classify maybe Ramaswamy as my winner. Not that he's going to take out Trump. I don't think anyone believes that. He doesn't believe that. But if his goal is either to be the second place guy, to continue to stay in the conversation, or maybe to end up in, Trump's cabinet or something like that, then I think he probably accomplished those goals a little bit. He talked fast. He probably seemed intelligent to people who don't know or care much about substance. So I think that's probably a big win for him. So I guess I would classify him as the winner. Ron DeSantis, I'm going to say, I guess, was the big loser. It would be too easy to say Tim Scott. I don't think Tim Scott will be in the next debate. They were clearly giving him less time for his answers. And even that was too much time. He wasn't running for president. He was running for pastor. It was weird. But I'm going to say Ron DeSantis because his losing is maybe it's more significant because he at least thought that he had a chance of winning this thing. He didn't really do anything that to me is going to severely hurt him. I don't think there were any major gaffes. They drilled so many lines into him that he repeated multiple times, trying to control his message. But he can't just not have gaffes at this point. He needs a knockout blow against Donald Trump, and he didn't even try for one, let alone land one. And so just because he needed to shake up the status quo and he wasn't even really trying to do that, I'm going to classify Ron DeSantis as my big loser. Anyway, I wish that we could go on forever, but I think we've pretty much covered at this point. Any final points, guys, before we call it a night?
I just had a really good time with you guys.
It's always that way. It's a bit of a homecoming of sorts, except no one's here but me.
Yeah, I know.
I still appreciate you guys. It's a good time.
I haven't done a show with you guys in 3 months. I'm going to be doing one with Brett very soon. And Jayar, thank you for holding it down on TDR while I've been gone. I really do appreciate that.
You have a very kind crowd.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. People they're gracious. They're nice. It's amazing.
Hopefully they'll welcome me back. But anyway, thank you to everybody out there for watching. Those of you who are already members, which is everybody who's seeing this right now. Final reminder that if you would like to upgrade perhaps to an annual membership and you want to get a nice little discount while you do so, that is something that you can look into at tyt.com/GOP live for all the details. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Jayar. Everyone check out the watch list. Everyone check out Brett coming up very soon on TDR, and we will see you soon.
Young, strong men.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.